On lap 40 we had a problem with the chassis, so now I've had more details about it. In the car obviously I had no idea what was going on. I mean I had an idea, but it was the wrong idea because I thought it was something that was in our control. Unfortunately we had an issue on the chassis, so I don't have much to add on that. It's just extremely frustrating when you are fighting for a win, when we had the pace that we had at the beginning of the race and we lose absolutely everything later on. It's very frustrating.
Just how tough was the car? Did you feel like you could make any progress at all?
Not really, no, just stuck where I was.
And can you go easy on yourself a little bit? Because I know it's been a tough weekend and you're incredibly tough on yourself. So what's the mindset heading into the summer?
Same as it was yesterday. Glad it's over and looking forward to going away. I thought it was game over then. Not literally, but you know, my chances of trying to win that race from there are pretty slim. Especially against Oscar, you know, I kind of expected us to be a bit better than the Ferrari over the race. I didn't expect to be, you know, from that position much quicker than Oscar. I believe that was a bit quicker, but not that much to still finish ahead. So our only option was to kind of try convert to a 1. Still wasn't expecting it to kind of work out. It was more let's just give it a good shot. Let's commit to that. And you know, my strengths are definitely end of stint pace, longevity of tire, that kind of thing. And today I utilized that to every possible tenth of a second, and it worked out. So I'm happy that we tried something a bit different. We risked a little bit, and it worked out perfectly. So I'm happy with the team.
Stressful, very stressful. Yeah, I think I could close the gap relatively quickly, but then that last second and a half, or 2 seconds, second and a half, was incredibly tough, and then I could just not get close enough to put a move on from there. So, yeah, close, very close.
I was really pleased with the race, to be honest. I don't think we could have hoped for more. I felt I was driving really well. The start was great. Did my best to sort of fend off Lando at the start to try and help Fernando to get ahead of him and sort of achieve that, but the McLarens were too fast today. They did a great job, and then obviously at the end of the race it was pretty dicey with Charles.
Yeah, definitely very happy. You know, P5, the best result of the year, and the best result as a team. 16 points before the summer break is. It feels good, and yeah, we were a lot faster than the Sauber, and no, but it was one of those weekends that everything feels so right. Seems free practice, good quali yesterday, good race, good execution today, good tire management. So yeah, nothing more we could ask.
So glad. We did an amazing job. The team gave me an amazing car for today's race. We managed to put everything in place. The strategy was great, and yeah, I don't see how we could finish the half season better.
There's lots to learn from this weekend, to understand, because I think we don't fully understand why we're competitive this week and we're last week. So yeah, we need to try and learn what we can from this week and put the car in that window of more places, because we want to be at this level of competitiveness more weekends.
Yeah, very, very happy. I think it's been a pretty tough race. It's hard to time a pit stop when there's this many cars and on a small track like this. So it's always a bit nerve-wracking when you know it's a very important part of the race. But yeah, for us, our dig was really good, and we were able to have a strong race.
Yeah, I mean, like my whole weekend, just no grip, just struggling a lot. Yeah, not how we want to be, but yeah, I knew it was going to be a tough day.
So what's the mindset heading into the summer break?
It's fine. I mean, yeah, it's been a tough week, but yeah, just keep trying, keep working, keep understanding, of course, also our weaker spots, and then try to improve on them.
I mean, first point of the European, yeah, it was tough. It was tough because first of all, it was not the plan to do one stop, but then, considering the position where we were, we decided to just keep going. Also because the pace was quite decent, and especially when I was in free air, I was able to improve the time and be consistent. But yeah, it was difficult. But happy to have brought the first point of the European season.
Yeah, I mean, this weekend just feels so unfair because the other car scored points, and we've been on it the whole weekend. And except when it mattered yesterday in Q3. So yeah, just very frustrating race. The pace was very, very strong again, but I was just being backed off by slower cars.
It's always going to be difficult from the back there, and we know in traffic it's just a bit difficult here. I think the one stop worked quite well for many people, so the two stop naturally wasn't even the faster one. Two stop plus a lot of traffic means very difficult race, and no yield today, but happy that Gabi was there to pick up the points. It all goes back to yesterday having a poor quali, and starting from the back is obviously the start of the end a little bit.
Yeah, we tried 2 stops. Majority of the field, I think, tried 1, and it was probably a fastest race. But 1 or 2 stops today, simply the car didn't have the pace to get better than P13, which is where we should have finished without the incident with Gasly. So yeah, it's where we deserve to be.
I came into this weekend quite optimistic, and I feel like we got a little bit exposed around this track. The wind picked up in the race, which we know we sometimes don't like, and but the track cooled down, so we thought maybe it kind of offsets them a little bit. But a little bit scary to see Gabriel so far up ahead. Liam as well. It's going to be a fight to the end of the season, I think. We need to do our homework, because I don't think we had the best car this weekend, and we can do a better job if we had another go at it. That being said, it was a very tough weekend.
Yeah, difficult day for sure. I think we need to have a good look on what if we would have used another strategy, if he would have given us anything. I don't think so in hindsight. I think just coming out the car now, I think we struggled a little bit, especially towards the end, to maintain the cars behind that were a bit quicker on fresher tires. We also got ahead of them, so we gave ourselves the opportunity. It was a solid start, but after that we need to work a little bit more on how to get the car a little bit more under control and get more pace throughout the race. But looking at this first half, I think there is some positive, definitely. We scored a decent amount of points, but we are not consistent enough and where we want to be every single time. So we'll give it everything for the next half.
Yeah, I picked up the damage from mid to the end of the race, which was not in my control. So that's cost me quite a lot pace there, and pretty much that's it. And also something that we could improve a lot from the communication wise, that if I was fighting for the points, there was a situation that it could cost quite big, and it happens last 2 weeks, last 2 races, back to back in a row. So to be honest, it started to get very frustrating with that. But something that definitely we have to improve a lot and fight hard second half.
Yeah, it was hard. I think the pace was not too bad. We lost a lot of time on different moments of the race, and it just became a tricky race. I think tough day. We of course tried our best, but difficult day out there. I think we lost some time on the start. I lost some places, had no rear grip, sliding a lot, and I went off. And then 2 very, very slow stops that cost us a lot of time. So just try to understand what happened on those stops, and for them not to happen again.
We're just too slow, and actually I had a lot of battle and thought there was some good racing, tough battles, and I'm here to race, not to just go around and let people get by. So it is what it is.
Managed to run in P10 for the first stint, but it was really clinging on for that entire stint. I was really struggling with my feeling with the car. Just massive oversteer for the whole stint, and then it picked up in the second stint. Looks like we picked up some damage somewhere because we saw a big drop in loads, and at that point it was clear that we couldn't finish the race.
This was about the best of the lot. Let's begin by having a look at the qualifying results, and you'll see immediately that there is something rather strange. There's a lot of drivers who didn't set their fastest lap in Q3 or even in Q2 for that matter. Let's have a look at the results straight away. Charles Leclerc on the pole for Ferrari, saying "Mamma mia" as he pulled up into the pit lane to the celebration of his team. Charles Leclerc 15.372. Then the two McLaren drivers right behind him. Oscar Piastri will start on the front row. Lando Norris P3. But look at that. Both of them under 1:15 in Q2, but are unable to get anywhere near that in Q3. We'll get onto that in a minute as to why that probably was the case. George Russell will start 4th for Mercedes. 5th and 6th, beautifully consistent laps throughout qualifying by Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll in the Aston Martins. 7th, Gabriel Bortoleto in the Jonathan Wheatley run, Sauber Ferrari. Excellent performance from Gabriel Bortoleto, ahead of Max Verstappen in the Red Bull. They did make changes overnight. It wasn't too bad in FP3 this morning, but he said, in nice phrase he used, "I need more compliance at the rear of the car." And when they did that, they took away everything from the front. And he finished FP3 saying the back end is a disaster, it's like driving on ice again. I guess they stiffened up the rear a bit and gave him a bit more front as well on the car. But for Max, it was a question of either having a decent front or a decent rear. He could never get a balance between the two. But he did pick up a little bit of pace towards the end relative to the opposition. Then Liam Lawson and Isaac Hadjar did very well again for Racing Bulls. Oliver Behrman. Lewis Hamilton did not make it out of Q2 in the car, effectively, that Charles Leclerc then put on the pole. As Lewis came into his garage, disgruntled, of course, because he'd been very near Charles. Charles had been 10th as they went into the second part of Q2, and Lewis 11th, 1/10 behind him. But Charles vaulted up to P5, whereas Lewis did not, and he didn't get out of Q2. It's an interesting little cameo because Charles had got on the radio before the last phase in Q2 saying, "Look, I don't care about anything else. Get me out of the garage. I want to have as few cars in front of me as possible." There was a bit of rain that had been falling at the beginning of Q2. As it was, the track got very quick at the back end of Q2, and Charles, as I say, did respond to that, and he was something like 5th quickest, whereas Lewis did not. So the big question is why Lewis was saying that and why he was not able to get into Q3. I think there were two main reasons. One, he caught Franco Colapinto. He followed Charles out of the pit lane, got to say, so he was out pretty early as well. But he caught Franco Colapinto going into turn 6-7, which is quite an important part, and he was slightly offline in order to get into 6 relatively cleanly. And as a result, his mid-corner speed in turn 6-7 was something like 5 kilometers slower than Charles on that lap, and slower than he'd been in his first run in Q2. So that was one thing. He did get traffic, and I think maybe that's why he was saying every time. But also have a look at this. This is the top speeds of Charles and Lewis as they began their last runs in Q2. Not at the end of the Q2 run, because obviously they back off, but at the beginning. And this is as they're going down just before the braking area into turn 1. Charles Leclerc 3.22, Lewis Hamilton 3.18. Look, to me, they're running about the same amount of downforce. So maybe that's an engine thing. What is it? This is a bizarre difference. Use that word twice now. Between Lewis and Charles Leclerc in top speed. Top speed not that significant around Hungary, but for one lap when you're trying to get from Q2 to Q3, it's extremely significant. The only thing I'd say is that the dreaded Franco Colapinto that Lewis caught going into turn 6 was going slowly just before that braking area, and Charles was right behind him and might have been able to get a little bit of a tow. I doubt it because there was a huge speed differential between the two of them, but nonetheless Charles was able to pass him just before the braking area into 1, and maybe that made the difference, and maybe that was enough for Lewis to say every time. Anyway, Lewis didn't get out of Q2. Charles Leclerc is on the pole. Now, just as a distraction, this is not really relevant to anything at all. I thought, given the number of drivers that did set faster laps other than in Q3, I thought it might be interesting to see if we did a fake grid based on everybody's fastest lap in qualifying. And some drivers were quicker in Q1 than they were in Q2. A lot of drivers were quicker in Q2 than they were in Q3. There are two provisos here, of course. One is that, as ever in qualifying in this system that we have, some drivers, if they just get into Q2, then don't even run in the first run in Q2 to save a set of tyres, and the same if you're going from Q2 to Q3. So they're not representative of completely in terms of what everybody is capable of doing, running new sets, 2 new sets in every section of qualifying. And then beyond that, of course, there were significant weather condition changes between Q1 and Q3. Q1, there was a 9 kilometer easterly wind blowing. Q3, there was an 11 kilometre westerly wind blowing. So big change. And that, as Oscar Piastri said after qualifying, it's a bit pathetic to be talking about wind direction or wind strength even being significant when you're talking about Formula 1 qualifying. But it is significant, and wind direction, wind strength affects different cars differently, depends on error, depends when you're out, depends on the angle you got the car, the yaw, everything else you got going on. So there were significant changes, on top of which the track temperature was something like 50 at the start of Q1 and then dropped to around 42 in Q3. And I think this helped some teams like Red Bull and Mercedes, who are running their tyres too hot. They were able to get more out of their cars as the track got cooler, whereas McLaren, who run very well in hot weather, actually lost some grip and balance as the conditions and the weather conditions changed. Anyway, taking all of that into account, look at what the grid could be in this fantasy world if we counted the fastest lap recorded by every driver throughout qualifying. Lando Norris would be on the pole, Oscar Piastri would be second, George Russell third, Lance Stroll fourth, Fernando Alonso fifth, and Charles Leclerc would be down in sixth place. Now that's because he just did that pole thing in this final little cameo of Q3, but it was actually completely unrelated in terms of the patterns to everything that happened in qualifying. It was this weird thing where all this, the wind change, the temperature change, everything else that went on, and something else we'll talk about in a minute as well. Then Isaac Hadjar ahead of Max Verstappen. And look at Lewis Hamilton, 12 on the actual grid, 13th on this one. So yeah, a lot of changes. Carlos Sainz further up, Colapinto further down, and so on. But anyway, as I say, that doesn't mean anything at all really, because the only thing that matters is what they do in that final run in Q3. So on that basis, let's start to dissect what actually happened on that final run in Q3. Top speeds, first of all. The wind's changed now, and everybody's thinking that the track is slower. Indeed, they're looking at the McLarens, who seem to be going half a second slower than they did in Q2, and that's a sort of barometer for everybody down the pit lane. In terms of top speed, on their final quick laps, George Russell 3:17, Charles Leclerc 3:15, Max 3:14, and then the two McLarens really slow 3:11. That means McLaren have got a lot of downforce, a lot of inherent downforce. That means that George and Charles Leclerc taking a lot of top speed advantage into the race, and that might be significant tomorrow with Charles if he can get a really good start, and maybe he can break away from the McLarens from DRS with that top speed. Let's wait and see. That translates into the following sector results on the last run in Q3. Charles Leclerc was actually quickest in sectors 1 and 2. 1, yeah, the top speed had a lot to do with it, but sector 2, unbelievable for him to be quicker than both McLaren drivers, bearing in mind that is just all corners, some medium speed corners, plus some high downforce, change of direction, slowish corners as well. 26.4 and the two McLarens in the 26.5s for that sector. And then sector 3, they're basically all the same, although Lando was quickest in sector 3, just throwing that McLaren around in frustration more than anything else, I think. So let's focus now right down into sector 2 to see what was going on there. And I've chosen turn 6 and turn 6, turn 7, which is a very typical Hungaroring right and then left tight section of road. In Q2, when there was not much wind, Charles Leclerc 113 there. Q3 with now a westerly wind blowing 11 kilometers an hour. Charles Leclerc 116. That looks like what you'd normally do between Q2 and Q3. You go quicker, yet another new set of Pirelli softs, getting more and more used to the feel of the tires, the circuit's rubbering in, you're going out relatively late. That's about what you'd normally see, that progression. But look at the two McLaren drivers, Q2 118 and 116. Q3 into that westerly 106, 112. Yeah, I don't know for sure, but I think it looks like Oscar kind of lost it, and he's probably sliding there and taking off quite a lot of speed. But let's take Lando's speed as a good barometer. It's still 4 kilometers an hour quicker in the middle of a slow corner in sector 2 in Hungary with that westerly wind blowing strongly. Now moving a little bit further around the lap, turn 11. I've only put that in really because just to be self-indulgent really. I love that corner. It's a quick corner. I love quick corners, as we all do, I think, as most of the drivers do. Turn 11 is a downhill quick right-hander leading onto a straight, so it's worth talking about because there is a straight afterwards, and being quick through there, having a quick exit from there, very important. Who was quickest there? As the wind grew stronger, as the temperatures came down, the Red Bull starting to look just like a Red Bull again, particularly on fast corners. Max Verstappen 2:45. And then you can see Oscar Piastri 2:44, Lando 2:41, George Russell 2:43. Very good job by Mercedes all day to manage all the compromises. Charles Leclerc 2:42, and then the two Aston Martins. It's quite interesting to see the two Aston Martins. I don't know whether this is a Fernando thing that he's passed on to Lance or what, but in the approach to turn 11, they come out of a quicker series of S's than the 6-7 section. It's quite a fast exit from there, and they're approaching 11 in 6th gear, and guys like Max, Piastri and Norris go into 11 without braking at all. They just lift. In the case of Oscar, he's lifting less than Lando. Lando lifts more for longer but has the car more settled, so he's not losing that much time. Max is just like that, incredible, no braking. The only three drivers, like as yesterday, who aren't braking going into 11. Charles Leclerc is braking, but he's kind of left foot braking. He's taking throttle out of it, but there's not a moment when he just has brakes. He's braking against throttle. But the two Aston Martins both brake, but they actually select 7th gear before turn 11. Everybody else stays in 6th. And it's not that they've got different ratios. It's not as if they're on the limiter. They're actually changing into 7th at relatively low revs. And I can only think this is a Fernando thing of just letting the car settle. It's a sort of Jackie Stewart thing. Always be in a longer gear if you can. The car is going to be calmer. And it's I would say it is classic Fernando, and he's passed it on to Lance, and Lance is doing exactly the same thing. Very impressive to see that. You'd say, well, they're not that quick, but it's not because they're taking 7th and then going down to 6th. It's just that the Aston Martin's still on very quick corners like that. Probably is still not a match even for a Red Bull in terms of downforce. But interesting difference in gear changing there, I thought. So now as to why Charles was able to do what he did at the end there. Well, some of you know what I'm going to say, because I've always said Max and Charles, and to some extent Lewis, certainly Lewis pre-21, and a little bit today. He was still driving very well, I thought. But certainly, let's say Max and Charles now are the two leading proponents of short corner driving in Formula One. It isn't to say they use a different line, because if it was as simple as that, everyone would take a shorter line. You just take a shorter line to have a shorter lap. No, it's not that. It's the subtlety and the suppleness of movement and the economy of movement and the rate of reaction to everything that's going on around dynamically in the car that enable Max and Charles to be able to get the front end to work when they're going into the corner quite early. And it's all to do with it's a balancing act, and they're doing it beautifully with footwork mainly, but also handwork. And I've often said that when you have a talent like that, it gives you a much broader brush of operation, and to be able to react to all the variables that come into play. And I often list them. It could be the wind, it could be oil, it could be tires going off, it could be a number of things like that. And I think that's what we saw today. For Charles, it was, well, this is Q3. This is the last run in Q3. I always go quicker on the last run in Q3. I'm going to do one of my laps. Oh, the wind's different. Oh, the car feels different. And he's just manipulating the car. That's all he's thinking. And then he's just naturally manipulating it. And I think at McLaren, where the drivers, when they're in the car, operating the car, have far fewer tools because they're on a much finer ribbon of operation. Because they're going in wider, they're more dependent on braking later, getting the power on sooner, all the edgy things that have very little margin for error. Because of all that, when the variables change in a big way, as they did between Q2 and Q3, I think McLaren were a bit shocked. They didn't really know how to react. I know that the engineers, of course, couldn't do anything anyway. But I think the two drivers were thinking, wow, the car feels different, or the back end's gone, it's suddenly an unstable rear, which I didn't have before, and they're driving around that. Whereas Charles thinking, oh yeah, unstable rear, yes, balance it like this, no problem. And it's just normal bread and butter for him. And I think that's what we saw today, the difference between a great short corner driver and the two McLaren drivers, who are sort of classic drivers in their own way. Oscar has advantages over Lando. Lando has advantages over Oscar. Put them together, and they're a great composite, classic Grand Prix driver. But they were no match for a driver of Charles' quality right at the end of qualifying there. And on top of that, Charles was able still to have that top speed advantage. But it wasn't as great in Q3 as it was in Q2. His top speed came down as well. But it was just there. He certainly wasn't losing any ground to the opposition in terms of top speed. and he just did it beautifully. And I think George Russell and Mercedes did a very good job as well. George particularly, he doesn't have quite the breadth of Charles Leclerc when it comes to all the different things he can do with the throttle, the steering and the brakes. He doesn't have quite the same breadth of operation as Charles because he doesn't go into the corners earlier. He's not as polished in that area, but he's very, very good at what he does. And as I said in a video we got out at the moment, one of George's great qualities is his ability to have the car sitting squarely on the road, and that's a great time management thing as well. And it's a good thing when the variables do change and you can react to it, because you're always looking for the car to be stable and to be flat to the road. Fernando Alonso, same thing in the Aston Martin. Another reason why he went well today, even when these variables came into play. And to reiterate that point about Charles, I think that was also why he did so well at the end of Q2 when he was P10. He was right on the bubble. He was 10th. Lewis was 11th. Under pressure, he went out and did the time. Again, that is a driver on the top of his game, and not only a driver, but a great short corner driver with all that repertoire that he has. And that's why I think he was again able to get up to P5. I'm not saying Lewis doesn't have that, and I'm not sitting here defending Lewis Hamilton all the time, but I am curious as to why his top speed was so down on Charles, and there's no doubt that he had to go offline to avoid Colapinto going into turn 6 as well. Red Bull, a scrappy day, but it kind of started to gather momentum as these conditions changed, and Max was able to do more as a driver, as distinct from just living with everything that was going on with the car, the tyres overheating, no grip at the front, no grip at the rear, driving on ice, all the stuff he's been talking about. But as qualifying went into the last moments of Q3, he did get a bit more grip, I think, when the temperature went down. And with the crosswinds, and there would have been crosswinds at certain moments, and certainly with the westerly, he had a different car, and he could be Max Verstappen a little bit, just showing what he can do with all those tools that he has at his fingertips. Yuki Tsunoda, by contrast, an outburst in FP3 this morning, which I was absolutely shocked by. I mean, if there's anything going to give Isaac Hadjar that drive pretty soon, it was this. I mean, there's Yuki. Quite obviously, Red Bull, the engineering team behind Yuki, had forgotten or made some sort of error to do with brake bias adjustment when the settings on the car were changed, or they put more fuel in the car, whatever it was. And Yuki just exploded on the radio and finished by saying, "Wake up, guys!" Now, for a guy who's just been given a massive promotion to go to the Red Bull A team, I think that was completely uncalled for. And I was shocked to hear that, to be honest. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Isaac Hadjar, again, looking very good, although on this occasion, just slower than Liam Lawson, who was, the first time I ever really noticed Liam Lawson, oddly, was in Hungary. Oddly, on the last corner, actually, where he had a massive lose in FP3 today, coming into the last corner. Typical Liam, asking so much of the car coming out of the second last corner on the right rear, and then asking so much on the left. He just lost the lot. But he calmed down for qualifying, and because he's quite a car control-y, drive with a rear type driver, he was able to sort of fight with all these variables that came into play pretty well and found a sweet spot and did a very good job. So Racing Bulls, again, excellent performance. Now in the hands of Alan Permain, very, very good guy from going back to the early Benetton days. But meanwhile, you've got to be wondering what Laurent Mekies is thinking. He goes to Red Bull, and they have just about the worst qualifying session they've had for, I don't know. Well, in some ways, the worst qualifying session they've ever had in terms of the car not working. They've had terrible qualifying sessions before, but it's usually been in the Renault days and when something wasn't working on the engine side. But for this car to be that bad around Hungary was just deplorable, really.
Ferrari turned the 2025 Hungarian Grand Prix qualifying into a masterclass in timing, execution and adaptability. While all eyes were on McLaren after dominant pace in FP1 and FP2, it was Charles Leclerc who claimed pole position with a last-minute flyer that left the paddock stunned. The team's setup choices, response to changing wind and Leclerc's own precision brought in one of the most unexpected Saturday results of the season. Here's the full breakdown of how Ferrari made it happen. Coming into qualifying, expectations were low for Ferrari. The team had shown solid but unspectacular pace through practice. Both McLarens had been quick on single lap runs, and most analysts expected a front row lockout from Piastri and Norris. Ferrari's long run simulations were competitive, but nobody predicted they would find 0.2 over a single lap. Then came Q3 and everything changed. The track conditions, particularly the wind, changed drastically after Q2. gusts that had helped stabilise rear ends earlier in the session were now throwing cars off balance through turns 1 and 4. Many drivers struggled with grip and braking zones. McLaren appeared caught out. Norris had a small moment on his final run and lost time on exit. Piastri, slightly understeering through Sector 2, could not gain the edge he needed. However, Ferrari had timed everything perfectly. Leclerc went out later in the run order. The wind had started to settle, tyre prep was optimal, and the track temperature had dropped just enough to bite. On that lap, Leclerc didn't push overly aggressively on entry. Instead, he committed to an ultra-clean line, especially through the low-speed sections. His exit out of turn 13 was textbook. His pole time was 1 minute 15.776 seconds, just 0.026 seconds ahead of Piastri. Carlos Sainz, meanwhile, missed Q3 by the narrowest of margins. His exit in quarter 2 was one of the session's biggest surprises, particularly given how balanced the Ferrari looked earlier. Post-session analysis suggested he may have prepped his tyres too aggressively, overcooking surface temps right before his flying lap. Trackside data showed minor drop-offs in grip in Sector 3, which proved costly. However, the spotlight remains on Leclerc and his pole. Ferrari's race engineers made bold choices between FP3 and qualifying. The team slightly tweaked Leclerc's front wing angle and rake setup to cope better with tailwind conditions. It allowed for smoother rotation mid-corner and gave Leclerc the confidence to brake later without losing rear-end stability. Those changes worked in quarter 2. In quarter 3, they became the difference maker. Leclerc himself described it afterward as probably one of my best laps ever. That says a lot coming from someone with over 25 poles. What made it stand out wasn't the lap time, it was the context. McLaren was faster for most of the weekend. The wind was unpredictable, and most drivers were losing time in sectors 1 and 3. Leclerc didn't just survive those variables, but literally adapted to them. Ferrari's pole also throws a spotlight on the car's development arc. The SF25 may lack the straight-line speed of Red Bull or the consistent downforce balance of McLaren, but it has a narrow operating window in which it becomes deadly. Budapest's tight, twisty layout, lower speed corners, and high deck surface align well with Ferrari's mid-corner stability. When tyre prep and aero balance are in sync, it performs. The team's hungry upgrade package, though subtle, may have played a role. A revised floor edge and tweaks to rear suspension geometry were trialled on Friday. While the team stayed quiet about specifics, paddock observers noted improved traction out of turn 5 and better balance in chicanes. It may have offered just enough grip in changing wind to swing Q3 in Leclerc's favour. On the pit wall, Ferrari's calm decision-making helped. They held Leclerc until the last wave of Q3 runners. That late track evolution was valuable. While other teams tried to cover McLaren early, Ferrari stuck to their prep plan. When conditions improved slightly toward the final 2 minutes, Leclerc was already in the zone. So where does this leave Ferrari heading into Sunday's race? They start from pole on a track where overtaking is difficult. That matters. But it won't be simple. McLaren's long-run pace still looks better, and Leclerc will need to manage tyre graining under pressure. Plus, weather reports hint at possible overnight showers, which could clean up rubbered-in lines and affect grip. Subscribe now if you haven't already. We'll keep you posted.